You ever find yourself squinting at a food package, trying to figure out what's actually in it? Well, that tiny type isn't just a design choice. It's a whole world of high-stakes decisions. We're going to dive into the super critical world of packaging legibility, where getting it right means more sales and better safety, and getting it wrong, well, that can have some really serious consequences. Let's get into it.
So it's a totally fair question. Why does this tiny type matter so much? You might think, it's just the fine print. But you know what? This little text is where some of the biggest battles in packaging design are actually won and lost. The fallout from getting it wrong is surprisingly severe.
Oh, the risks are huge, and they just keep piling up. It might start with something that seems small, like a barcode that won't scan at the checkout. But it gets so much worse. We're talking about massive regulatory fines, or even having to do a full product recall. And maybe, most critically, it can be a genuine safety risk for consumers with allergies. If you get it wrong, you could be completely blocked from selling in your target markets, or even get hit with legal action over font licensing. The stakes? They really couldn't be any higher.
So how do you even begin to navigate this minefield? Well, it all starts with the rules. And let's be super clear here. This isn't about style. Not yet, anyway. This is about the law. Think of it as the regulatory floor, the absolute rock-bottom minimum you have to meet just to play in the game, especially in major markets like the US, the EU, and the UK. And right off the bat, we see this fundamental split in how things are done. Over in the US, it's kind of like an element-by-element puzzle. The rules for the word calories are totally different from the rules for the ingredient list. But the EU and UK, they take a much simpler approach. They have one single universal metric that governs all the mandatory info, and that metric is called the X height. So what exactly is X height? It's really simple. It's just the height of a font's lowercase x. This part of the letter, without any of the tails going up or down, is the core of its readability. In the EU and UK, that core has to be at least 1.2 millimeters high. And here's the key. It's a way more accurate measure of how legible something actually is than just a point size, which can be super misleading. And check this out. Here's a perfect example of that US system in action. The nutrition facts panel is basically a rigid blueprint. Calories needs a whopping 22-point bold type, but the footnotes can shrink all the way down to a tiny 6-point. See? Each element has its own specific rule. It's not about one universal standard. It's about following a really precise and, honestly, pretty complex map. So, following the rules keeps you out of trouble. That's great. But it definitely doesn't guarantee your package is actually, readable. So now we're going to move beyond the bare minimum. It's time to talk about the craft of creating real clarity. This quote right here from the source material just says it all. Regulatory floor is not the legibility ceiling. What that means is that all those minimums we just discussed, the 1.2 millimeter X height, the 6-point footnotes, that's just your ticket to get into the race. It is not the finish line. Great design always aims higher. So how do you aim higher? Start with this number, 4.5 to 1. This is the gold standard minimum for contrast ratio, and it's borrowed from web accessibility guidelines, but it's an absolute game changer for print. It's a simple mathematical way to make sure your text actually pops off the background. You know that trendy light gray text on an off-white box? Yeah, it almost certainly fails this test. Checking your design against this ratio is one of the easiest wins for making sure people can actually read what you printed. On a crowded package, visual chaos is the enemy. So the key is to ration your design choices. You don't need 5 different fonts. You just need a clear hierarchy. The super simple 3-level system, title, info heading, and body, is usually all you need. Just simple changes in size and weight are more than enough to create an intuitive map for the reader's eye. And sometimes clarity isn't just a good design choice. It's a life or death matter. Seriously. In the EU and UK, you are legally required to make allergens stand out from the pack. That means using bold text, or maybe a different font style, or even a contrasting background to pull them out of that list. The one thing you should never, ever do, rely only on italics. At small sizes, it's just not distinct enough to guarantee someone's safety. Okay, now for the one part of the package that has absolutely zero room for creative wiggling. The barcode. This thing has a single, golden rule, and it is simply not up for debate. Here it is: lock the barcode first. Before you add a single word of copy, before you even think about placing a logo, you put down the barcode and its required buffer zones. This is not a design tip, it is a workflow mandate. And following it will save you from one of the most common and costly mistakes in this whole process. So what makes the barcode so demanding? It's a little thing called the quiet zone. This is the mandatory empty space on both sides of the bars, and you have to treat it like a protective force field. For a standard barcode, that clear space has to be at least 9 times the width of the very narrowest bar. No text, no graphics, nothing can invade that space. And if you are ever tempted to just nudge your design into that space, just remember this quote: barcode zones are not negotiable. As the source material puts it, violating these quiet zones is a leading cause of those infuriating scan failures right at the checkout. It's a simple rule with a very direct, very public, and very expensive consequence. Okay, we've covered the rules, the craft, and the non-negotiable barcode. Now, let's pull all these ideas together into a simple pre-flight checklist. This is what you need to make sure your design is both compliant and crystal clear. All right, here is your 5-point pre-flight check. 1. Go bigger. Just do it. Always aim for 10 to 20% above the legal minimum to be safe. 2. Check contrast. Test your colors against that 4.5 to 1 ratio. 3. Lock barcodes. Place them first, quiet zones included, and you'll avoid so many headaches later. 4. Pre-flight panels. Use the official government regulations as your guide, not some random template you found online. And 5. Verify licenses. This is the one everyone forgets. Make sure your font's license, the EULA, actually allows for use on commercial packaging. So, in the end, it really all comes down to this one question. It's just not enough to tick the boxes and be compliant. The real goal, the mark of truly great design, is to be effortlessly clear. So you have to ask yourself, is my design just compliant, or is it truly clear? Because that's the standard that really, truly matters.